Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now, if you've been following along in my last few videos, I have been working on this 2008 Mac Pro that I picked up locally for $60. Now, it was very dirty, and I gave myself a challenge that I was going to make it a usable machine, so it's been a bit of a video series on the resurrection of this Mac Pro. What I've done so far is cleaning, essentially. I have been blowing it out, cleaning the case. I repasted the CPUs. I did a lot of work to this machine. Now, the last part of this challenge that I gave myself was to see if I can make it a usable machine today. It is 14 years old. The CPUs in there are getting up there in age. They're not very powerful at all. They do have 8 cores when you combine the two because it's a 2 quad-core 2.8 Xeon. So what I'm going to be doing today is upgrading the machine, but I also gave myself the challenge of doing the upgrades without paying a single penny. So it had to be whatever I have on hand. Now, to be fair, I have been collecting Macs for a while, so I do have a lot of parts lying around here that would work very well. So I've stripped the machine. The only thing that's in there is a Bluetooth and Wi-Fi card. I'm going to show you what I've been taking out and what we're going to be adding to the machine. The first part of this upgrade is going to be to the RAM. Now, we do have on these two sleds, which are slightly dusty still, but I can get rid of that later, 8 gigabytes of RAM, so there are 2 gig sticks here and here. I checked my RAM bin, which every good collector has, and I found some RAM that should be compatible. It is 2 gigabytes of RAM that should work, but it's at 667 megahertz. So it will downclock this a fair bit, but it should still work. So that's for our RAM situation. Next, I took out the original drive. I still have to back up a lot of the software on this before I wipe it, so I'm not going to be putting that back in. What I will be doing is installing multiple OSs. So for that, I've decided on 3, which I will show you later on in the video. So here's drive 1, drive 2, and drive 3. So 3 separate OSs that I think should work just fine on this computer. And I do have an extra one if I want to add in more storage later. So that's going to be our drive situation. Next, there was the original graphics card, which is right here, which is a Mac card, by the way. So it's always good to have an extra one. So it's a Radeon 3870 Mac Edition, 512 megabytes. I'm sure at the time it was a wonderful card. But I looked around to see what parts I had left over, and in my last Mac Pro upgrade, I still had one of these, which is the Mac version of the Radeon 5770 with 1 gigabyte of VRAM, so it should be a lot better than this card here. So we're going to be adding that in. I am not going to be using this video card here for rendering and all that. While I do have the cables, I just don't see the need for it. I don't think I'll be doing anything this high end, so rather than to just have the card sitting there for no reason, I've decided to remove it. And finally, being such an old machine, it does not have USB 3. So I do have this USB 3 card, which claimed it was Mac compatible in the past. It works in certain systems. I know it doesn't always work perfectly, and it needs external power, which I have an adapter right here. So we're going to see how well it works in the machine. So these are all the upgrades. So I'm going to be putting them in now, and we'll take it from there. What I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be installing 3 separate OSs on the Mac. The first one is going to be the latest version of Mac OS that will run on this Mac without any modifications, really, which is Mac OS 10.11, which is a few years old at best, and unfortunately does have some security loopholes. And we're going to see just how well it runs on this 14-year-old machine. The second one I'm going to be installing is Chrome OS, which recently Google has announced they purchased the manufacturer of, I believe it's called Cloud Ready, which allows you to create your own Chromebook essentially. So I'm going to be installing it on a second sled inside this machine, and we're going to see how well that runs. And finally, I've decided to add a Linux flavor on here, which is Linux Mint version 19. So it is a long-term support OS. So it has been out for a while. I believe there's a newer version of 20 that is out as well, but I'll be sticking to 19. So I'm going to be installing all three, and we're going to come right back and go through each individual drive and just see which one can be used as a daily driver. Here we are at the desktop. So I am booted into the last official version of macOS that will run on this computer. So it is 10.11. Now you can go past this with some, we'll call them hacks, but for this video I'm just trying to stick with what will install pretty easily. As you can see, I am using the 5770. I'm recording on a separate screen right now. I have put in, there's the one drive that shows up because the other drives, I guess the way they're formatted, is not recognized by macOS. And we have all the RAM, so 10 gigabytes installed. Now, for usability, unfortunately, a lot of software is getting pretty out of date. So, for example, this version of Safari, 2018 is the last copyright date on this, so 11.1.2. And I've noticed it doesn't update, so you don't really have the security fixes. I've tried things like Firefox, but I believe Firefox needs 10.13. The only web browser that I've found so far that would run and that is up to date is Google Chrome. I'm not a huge fan of Google Chrome, but you do what you can. So things like YouTube, just putting it on mute, seem to work fine. I'll just go to my channel. So here we go. And everything seems to load just fine. Now, it's not going to be winning any power races, we'll call them. It's not that super powerful machine, but this works pretty well. As for other things, a lot of software that I use on my newer Macs unfortunately will not run on here. So if, for example, I say, you know what, I want to install version of iWork, the latest version unfortunately cannot be installed. So we're kind of out of luck there. I'm sure we could find older versions or download older versions, but to me that's just an extra headache. So usability as it stands is, I'd say, 75%. I could do a lot of things online with Chrome. I'm sure there's a lot of apps that still will download and a lot of things that we can do. I've also noticed this. So if we go to About This Mac System Report, it does pick up, if I could find it, there we go. It does pick up the USB 3 bus, so the card that I installed. But again, this could just be something about the card. Whenever I put in any USB devices into the card, nothing is recognized. So is it the card's fault, the OS's fault? I'm willing to say it's the card's fault that it's just not perfectly capable running under, we'll say, older Mac OS. As a gaming machine, the way it stands, sorry to anybody I offend out there, but Mac OS is not known for being fantastic for gaming at this point. So, could I use it at Mac OS level at this, the last official OS? I don't think this would be optimal. So, what we're going to do is we're going to boot into another drive. Here we are booted into Chrome OS, which I did recently on a live stream. The problem with this was the install took a very, very long time. I don't know, it was because of the hard drives I was using. Maybe it prefers SSDs, no idea. Eventually I was able to get this working. Now, the positives for this OS are speed, obviously. Essentially, it's one big web browser. So, for example, you can open anything and it is super, super fast. So, if I could really spell my name, it'd probably be even better. It is one big web browser. Things work surprisingly quickly. It doesn't really take much resources. So I've already downloaded a system viewer which shows you the temperatures. I mean, yeah, I just replaced the CPUs, but it is barely using any of the CPU power just to run. Everything opens at a click. Now, I'm not sure how great my signal is. Oh, strong signal. Generally, it's not. So, if we go to my channel, click on my last video, it's pretty instant, as you can see. So I'm scrubbing through, clicking different areas of the video. It works well. Now, can you get a lot of work done on this? I think you could, because the way Google has set everything up, you always have access to different things from, your slides, your docs, your files. You can add in games. So I've added in, for example, WebQuake, which works surprisingly well. You have access if you want to pay for things like, YouTube Music. I don't have a camera attached, so I can't be doing that. I installed web games like Cut the Rope. The quality of the applications, or I should say the games that you would be using, is not exactly super high. Could this be a daily driver? Honestly, if all you're doing is basic web browsing, watching videos, and light document editing, yeah, this is completely fine. Now, the only issue is the version that is running on here was never meant to be installed on a 2008 Mac Pro, so it could be borked pretty quickly, all things considering. So it's working for now, but is this something for the everyman to install on their machine? No. This OS, while it's very lightweight and works pretty well, is not meant to be used, as far as I'm concerned, with older machines. The fact that I was able to get this running is nothing but spectacular. So not everyone's going to be able to do this, but the way it stands now, if I was just, let's say, giving this machine to a child to use for their homework, or they want to watch certain of their videos online, yeah, this is perfectly fine for them. For anyone else who actually wants to do, things like video edit or any kind of programming or anything like that, no, this is not for you. So this was the second OS. So we're going to switch to the last OS I installed in this machine and compare it to that. Here we are booted to the desktop. Now I've installed Linux Mint 19. There is a newer version. I believe they're up to version 20, but I've kept it on 19 because it's like a long-term software, so it has long-term support, and it's pretty mature, so I think that there's not going to be too many issues. Now, there are a few things I've come to understand trying out this OS. First of all, it is super slow. Now, could that be because of the hard drive that's on here, that it's running off a spinning Rust? Yeah, I'm sure a large majority is that. But if you compare it to the Mac OS drive and the Chrome drive, for example, they boot pretty quickly, where this one takes a minute or two, really, to fully load. Now, another problem is loading things. So I just clicked on the software manager, which is, I don't know, the Linux equivalent of, we'll call it the App Store. Difference being, I don't find that, I'm highly doubtful it's as secure, so I don't think anybody's really vetoing apps that could be taking your information. So it is loaded up. It does have a lot of available applications. So we could do, for example, say I want to play a game. There are quite a few ports of games. Some are taken off of, old versions of Doom, things like that. I've loaded up Super Tux Kart, which is, it's opened really quickly because I've already opened it. It's kind of like a Super Mario, I should say again, a Mario Kart game. So it is running. The graphics look fine. It works okay. It's enjoyable for what it is. Again, it is a free game. You can't really complain too much. So you can technically game on here. There are things like, for example, once it's finished searching, you can have Steam installed on this machine as well. Now, the only problem with that is not all games are Steam compatible for Linux, I should say. So you might have access to your account and your amount of games that you've purchased in the past, but that does not mean it's going to run properly on the machine. It just means that you have access to them, and some just will not work at all. Now, could you do things like, I don't know, office work? Technically, yes. So it comes with LibreOffice. And again, it opened fast because I just had it open a moment ago. And you could do different things, you know, drawing, math formulas, databases, writer, all that. And they claim that it's actually pretty good with, you know, Word documents. Pretty compatible. But again, it's not going to be 100%. Could I see an office worker using this for important things? No. I mean, you always want a machine that's pretty compatible with what other people, let's say, in your company are doing. Could I video edit on this? Honestly, I've been looking around the solutions and I haven't really seen anything that really amazes me or that looks that simple to use. So I'm positive, however, as I go to insert the USB drive, and you'll see some icons pop up. These were from when I installed this OS. The USB drive seems to suddenly work. So this card that I put inside the machine, the USB card, is completely compatible. So when it comes to Linux, it is a fascinating thing. It is very enjoyable. I mean, you play around, you can install different repos, you go through terminal, you could do updates. There's a lot there. It's pretty mature for what it is. Would I say that this is an everyman's kind of OS? No, not at all. This is an OS that you should know what you're doing. This is an OS where you can go in and modify things to the way you like it. So for the more experienced computer user, this is fine. For the everyday person, this is not a great OS to be using. And there you have it. So I think I was pretty successful in making this slightly more usable than just the way it came to me. Now, is this an everyday daily driver? I guess it really depends on what you're doing with the machine. So as we saw in those different OSs, different operating systems are able to do different things slightly better. For an everyday machine that's just consuming media, watching videos, things like that, this is fine on Chrome OS. I see no issues with it at this point. Would I be using it for video editing, things like that in Chrome OS? Obviously not. Then I would move over to Linux or maybe Mac OS 11, 10.11 I should say, with an old version of some video editing software. That would work. I mean, each OS has something which helps this machine. Now, I did all of this without putting any money into the machine. Again, all the parts that I've added in were parts that I had laying around. I'm sure if I put a much better graphics card, for example, or updated the storage to SSDs, or maxed out the RAM, I probably could get a little bit more of a benefit out of the machine. But for a 14-year-old Mac, is it really worth it? Personally, I don't think so. I think this is a great machine just for, you know, exploring Linux, playing with Google Chrome, doing things like that, basic tasks, but this is not a daily driver, unfortunately, at this point. So I think, honestly, it was a fun project. I'm glad I picked this machine up. It was great to see just what it's capable of, and I'm still very impressed that for a 14-year-old machine, it was able to do so many things still to this day. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video or these past few videos. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.